for joining. I am going to hand it right over to Minister McGregor to get started, and then we will go to Minister Bethlenfalvy.
Beautiful. Thank you, Shannon. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. Well, welcome to all of our friends from cultural media. Welcome, Minister Bethlenfalvy. Thank you for being here. You guys all know that here at the Ford government, we put a large, substantial effort into making sure that we communicate with the diverse cultural communities around Ontario. And we've got a tremendous amount of respect for the role that cultural media plays. So we always do our best to make sure that you get the same type of access from our ministers, from our government, as frankly as any other media, and sometimes even more, because we know how important it is that you are able to report the truth and report on what the government's doing to your communities. We have Minister Bethlenfalvy here, our Minister of Finance, fresh off of delivering a budget last week for our government. You know, he'll go into the deep details on it, but safe to say it's a budget that I think hits all the right notes when it comes to protecting our economy, safeguarding our sovereignty, and particularly tariff proofing the future workforce and Canadian businesses. The minister has shown tremendous leadership over the years, over many budgets. This budget might be the most important that we're able to put forward in the times that we're in, where we really need to make decisions about what kind of country, what kind of province we're going to be. And so far we've seen a lot of positive sentiment around the investments that the minister has decided to make. So without further ado, please make way for the Honourable Peter Bethlenfalvy, Minister of Finance. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. McGregor, for the kind remarks to open up. And welcome, everybody. It's good to be with you, albeit online. I think we've done this before in person, and we'll always try to do that. But it's good to join you again today. And as you know, last week I introduced the 2025 budget, which is entitled A Plan to Protect Ontario. It's our government plan to protect workers, businesses, and communities. And the U.S., clearly, as the minister mentioned, the U.S. tariffs and the economic uncertainty surround us highlights the underlying issues we face as an economy and as a nation. Now is the time for growth and improvement in our standard of living, growth in our real GDP, and growth in our wages, our revenue per worker, with bigger paychecks. And we need to leverage every tool at our disposal to make this happen. Whether it's our competitive advantage in critical minerals, technology, energy, talent, our workforce, or whatever, we will need to bolster our economy by investing in our promising industries. Today's budget that Graham is referencing includes $11 billion in relief for businesses, small and large, to offer flexibility in these uncertain times and in order to retain workers. And we've also announced another $1 billion in skills development to offer reskilling and retraining, which builds on the $1.5 billion we've already put into the program and has retrained almost 1 million workers in Ontario. So these are some of the actions that we've been taking to protect Ontario from the U.S. tariffs, but we're not stopping there. We need to do more, we need to think differently, and we need to think boldly. And we need to look to the economy of tomorrow. And that's why we're enhancing and expanding the Ontario-made manufacturing tax credit worth $1.3 billion for businesses to invest more, whether in machinery, buildings, or equipment right here in Ontario. We are also proposing the creation of the all-new Critical Minerals Processing Fund. Armed with $500 million in funding, this investment by our government would provide strategic financial support for projects that accelerate our domestic capacity to dig, process, and sell these critical minerals to new markets here at home and abroad. Our government is increasing the Indigenous Opportunities Program from $1 billion to $3 billion. And we're renewing partnerships through the Indigenous Participation Fund, some $70 million to enable meaningful consultation on mineral exploration and development projects. In addition, we continue to have the most ambitious capital plan in Ontario's history, with more than $200 billion over the next decade to build and maintain critical infrastructure such as roads, highways, transit, hospitals, and high-speed internet, reflecting that, in part, we had a lot of catching up to do, but we also saw unprecedented population growth, over 1 million people over just the last few years. So critical infrastructure is critical to our future prosperity. We need to get people and goods moving faster while improving our economic productivity. And to get more building faster, we're proposing $5 billion in new capital funding through the Building Ontario Fund to deliver on even more critical infrastructure projects in energy, housing, long-term care, and other sectors for projects that need to be built faster, more of it, and for projects that otherwise would not get built. Armed with this ambitious, bold, and targeted plan, our government will make the investments necessary for our well-being today, as well as for the well-being of future generations. We have everything we need to propel Ontario towards a future ripe with opportunity more than ever before. The status quo is no longer an option. We have to seize the moment. Our plan seizes the moment and builds for tomorrow as well. We are ready, and together we'll protect Ontario. And with that, I'd be happy to take some questions.
All right, thank you, Minister. I know some of you have already messaged, but if you do have any questions, please just let me know in the group chat and I'll be sure to call on you. With that, first I'll go to Nitin with Prime Asia.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you very much. Hello, Minister. Minister, budget is as announced, and three major components. One is healthcare, the second is crime, and third one is the landlord-tenant board. These are some critical issues, and we would like to know, like, what are the provisions there in the budget which you allocated for the policing to tackle the crime effectively, because we have seen roller coaster by the federal and provincial level at many times. And for the landlord-tenant board, more adjudicators have been hired by the government, but solution has not been found. Is changing the laws is the solution, or what is the solution? And third, on the healthcare system, how much funding we more needed to tackle the rising population here? How much we need from the federal level? So if these three components you can touch. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Nitin. You've packed a lot in there in that one question, so I'll unpack it. Why don't I start with the landlord and tenant board first, because that's an issue that I've heard from the community for some time, and there's a lot to do there. I can tell you that our Minister of Attorney General, Doug Downey, and our whole government and caucus, including the Premier, are absolutely seized with the issue. So that's why this budget continues to invest record amounts in hiring more people, adjudicators, to make sure that we continue to process the backlog. In fact, we've made great progress on speeding up the time frame to do the adjudications. I know the Attorney General continues to invest in speeding up the process and the staffing, and also the process. It's not just the resources, but also the process and the regulations that can lead to a more timely adjudication for landlords and for tenants. So that's that, and an important issue for our government. On the issue of crime, no question. And this budget does, as you point out, deliver big for giving the tools necessary for our law enforcement to go after the bad actors. And we're very sensitive to that. We have seen, for example, on auto theft, some of our measures on providing funding for auto theft, money for our law enforcement for guns and gangs is having an effect. We're seeing a drop off in auto theft, but at the same time, then you also see crime goes to other areas like home invasions and carjackings, and these can be even more violent offenses. So we're continuing to invest in hiring more police officers. We continue to support them with another additional 2 helicopters. That's on top of the 5 that have been proven to be very effective at combating crime. And we're thinking down the road a little bit by providing funding so that the training center in Aylmer for the OPP and police officers is going to be upgraded, and we're building a new OPP headquarters in Aurelia. So there's many more things in the budget. There's a lot dedicated to that. You mentioned federal government, both for healthcare, but I'll also fill in for bail reform. That is not just a priority for our premier and our government, but I've heard from other premiers across the country that this is a priority. And we've heard from Prime Minister Carty that this is a priority for the federal government. So we very much look forward to working with the federal government to make sure those violent offenders get off our streets and stay off our streets. With regard to healthcare, Nitin, so that was the third part of your question. We're continuing to invest record amounts in our healthcare system. A big focus of that is primary care, making sure within 4 years, every person that wants to be attached to a family physician and an interdisciplinary professional team in the community has that capability. We're leading the country, but there's more to do there. So significant investment in primary care. We continue to put in a significant investment in acute care, and by acute care, I mean hospital beds, hospital renovations, new builds, and so we're making a lot of progress. Again, a significant $56 billion to continue not only to build what we said we were going to build, but to accelerate wherever possible that building, so that we have we're covering both from one end, the primary care, your family doctor, all the way to if you need to use a hospital, to reduce wait times, to clear up the surgery backlogs, which we're making really good progress in, and attach every into a family doctor.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Hamreen at Punjab TV.
And pleasant afternoon, everybody. Minister, while the 2025 budget emphasizes resilience and self-reliance in the face of US tariffs, there are still many Ontario manufacturers and small businesses who still rely heavily on the US supply chains. What concrete measures are in place to support these businesses in diversifying their markets? And how will you ensure this doesn't just lead to more subsidies without some basic structural change in the country? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Emery. Very good question. High level, we've provided $30 billion in immediate relief. I mentioned some of them in my opening remarks, such as the $9 billion in tax deferrals, which allows companies to manage their workforce and get some liquidity. There's also the WSIB premiums, another $2 billion. That's real money that goes back to the businesses in terms of a surplus rebate out of the WSIB program. I mentioned the $1 billion to retrain and reskill, and of course that's retraining, reskilling. To your question about more structural changes, that's to retrain and reskill for the jobs in demand, and that's a critical point. Longer term, we're investing in, for example, the manufacturing sector with the Ontario Made in Manufacturing tax credit. This is going to allow for those making investments, long-term capital investments in plant and equipment for our manufacturers who are impacted. They're obviously in some quarters impacted, and be able to get a larger tax incentives, like cutting corporate taxes, so that if they're making long-term investments here, they get an incentive to do that. Those are some of the examples of taking short-term measures and medium-term measures to have structural change, to adapt to structural change. Now, of course, the ultimate goal is to not have these tariffs on our industries, on our workers. We're working very closely with the federal government to negotiate the best deal possible for Ontario manufacturers, auto manufacturers, steel, aluminum, or whatever may get impacted. So that's our primary goal, and to make sure that the workers stay on the jobs, they don't leave their jobs, and that we continue to move Ontario forward.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Bill with Greca TV.
Thank you, Shannon, and thank you both ministers for addressing the cultural media. And of course, a lot of credit goes to Shannon starting this while at the Premier's office. We certainly appreciate that finally the cultural media become part and parcel of what is happening in not only in government, but in society. Minister Bethlenfalvy, as I see the highlights of your budget and the government's budget, in my 58 years in Ontario, I don't recall a more ambitious, more comprehensive type of budget. It's amazing how many areas it covers, and billions of dollars will be invested. My question, I don't want to go to specifics. There are many questions about specifics, but my question has to do is, does your budget incorporate the amounts of any negative outcomes because of the Trump tariffs into it? And does it include any projections of income as a result of the new initiative by removing the barriers between provinces? Have you incorporated this type of calculations in your budget? And my second part of the question is that you're projecting a 6 billion, I believe, in deficit for the year 25-26. What I find it extremely amazing is that you want to balance that by 2027. Is that possible?
So I'll answer that one first. Yes. And we're very committed to balancing the budget. We think, and so is the Premier, Bill. So thanks for that question. So we're very committed. It's taxpayer money, and it's important that we manage the taxpayers' money prudently and focus on the priorities that, frankly, we just got elected on just a few months ago. With regard to that deficit, it is because of the tariffs. The time that you should invest and lean in is when it could be we did through the pandemic. This is another one of those moments where businesses and workers are being impacted. So I think it's the right thing to do. On a relative proportion, our budget deficit is actually very small relative to our economy, 1.2 trillion. When we took office, it was 850 billion. Now, 7 years later, our economy is 1.2 trillion. So 350 billion wealthier. And so we're talking about a $10 billion deficit from what we projected last year. So I think we're doing pretty well there. You asked about free trade and interprovincial trade as part of your question. You know who's Canada's best trading partner is? Canada. We should be trading with ourselves with free trade. We've got more free trade agreements with other countries than any country in the G7. Good. Well, how about the G13, the 13 provinces and territories? So,
Okay, thank you. Next. Logan? You have to unmute.
Hello,
Yes. But,
Shannon. I don't believe the minister has finished, unless if I missed the last part.
oh, sorry. Yeah. I was about halfway through.
Oh, I apologize. Sorry.
No. I mean, I'll try to go quicker, but Bill
No,
asked.
sorry. I thought the break and then I thought it was.
Yeah, Bill asked a great question. I was halfway through the free trade in Canada. We have free trade agreements with the most of any G7 country with other countries. I was saying let's have the best free trade agreement with 13 provinces and territories, called the G13. That could create about $200 billion of extra GDP in this country. So that's without dealing with anybody else other than ourselves. So I think that's a real opportunity. Premier Ford has taken the lead. A number of provinces have signed on. Nova Scotia has been a tremendous leader. Tim Houston, the Premier there. New Brunswick has signed on. Waipikanu has signed on with Manitoba. So the train is leaving the station, and Prime Minister Mark Carney has indicated he wants to do his part by July 1st. On your first question, which I think, have we looked at or calculated the impact of tariffs in our budget? And thank you for those comments on the budget. The answer is yes, we have. We've actually taken the private sector forecasts who have incorporated the tariffs. Since we're one of the last to do the budget because of the election, we've got more information to be able to incorporate the negative aspects, frankly, a slower economy and the impact on our GDP than other provinces, because we're further down the line with that. So I think we've been very prudent and conservative, frankly, in incorporating the potential impact on our economy on tariffs.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
Okay, apologies again, Minister. My computer froze there for a second, and when I had the pause, I just
No
jumped in.
worries.
Okay, so Shanali, Behind Me Media.
You said Logan, right? I was
Okay,
waiting.
Logan at Uthan. Yep.
Okay. Can I go? Okay, because good afternoon, both ministers, Minister of Finance and Minister of Citizenship and Immigration. First of all, I like to thank Minister Graham for being with us for last few meetings, and I appreciate and thank you for your willingness to see the ethnic media, which you may feel that it's your friends and your people. So thank you and for your presence here. Minister Peter, Minister of Finance. So I know you have passed the hardship during the preparation of a budget, and we all be very not excited because we never expected is a big huge number of dollars as the deficit. So you explain to us what are the reasons the U.S. tariff and other unexpected expenses occurred due to the auto theft and the criminal activities in the province. We all understand, Minister. So thank you. So according to other initiatives you presented today, we have a hope that, as you said, there's a possibility for balancing the budget. So we are very happy to hear that, and it is Ontario is a very strong and having natural resources many. So we hope that as a minister with many years of experience and having a wonderful premier, so our future will be bright by both of your services. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Logan. And one thing I haven't mentioned that I'm very proud, while we've done a lot of initiatives to help businesses and workers while retaining a path to balance, we made the gas tax cut permanent. And I'm very proud of that because, cutting the gas tax has put money back in the pockets of many people who have to drive to work, take the kids to school, but also small businesses who have big gas bills and people who have to move goods. So that's helping the economy. That's putting money back in the pockets of people, putting money back in the pockets of businesses and stimulating the economy. So we're very proud of that as well.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Shanali at Behind Me Media.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity for me to speak, and thank you, Minister, for taking the time. Yes, we have been talking about the deficits also. So my question is now, Ontario finances are said to be, in the strongest position in over a decade. But the provinces is projecting a 14.6 billion deficit next year. So how do you justify increasing spending with running deeper deficits? I also have a follow-up question, like since you spoke about the fuel cuts, the tax cuts on fuel as well. So yes, there has been a cut, but is there anything more in place for the renters and the low-income or low-income people who are working for low income?
Yeah, two great questions, Shanali. And I will say the 14.6 billion deficit That's one of the smallest in Canada. Quebec and BC's are about the same size, a little bit smaller, but almost the same. Quebec is half the size of our economy. BC is 1/3. So in terms of comparative, Ontario is doing by far better than many provinces, and frankly, outside of Canada too. So it's not a path to balance today, but it's a path to balance in 2 years. And I think doing both is the prudent thing to do. With regard to your second question on renters and low income in particular, I would just highlight a couple of things. We're always focused on that because affordability and the cost of living. That's why we did things like cut the gas tax. We did move early to lower the tax rate, not the tax rate, but what we call the low individual family tax rebate, to make sure that people making $50,000 and under pay the lowest amount of tax in Canada, so that they get to keep more of their money. So that's very important. I think the third thing I would say is that, obviously we have a supply problem in housing, and this is part of the reason we continue to have a deficit. You don't slow down on trying to build houses or build hospitals or build highways or subways, because if you slow down, then you're just delaying the costs and maybe even more expensive, and you've got more to do. So we want to make sure that we continue to lean in very heavily into housing, including renters, owners and renters. And one of the ways we did that last week is we announced another $400 million to work with cities in the GTA and right across the province for sewage and water, the infrastructure. So we put up some of the money and they put up some of the money, and municipalities said that was virtually their number one ask, to help them with infrastructure so they could build more, they could build faster. So there's not a single thing, there's many things that we're doing to make sure that housing is affordable, that the cost comes down, and that we deal with the cost of living for many of those, particularly those who are on lower income.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Abhijit Prashar with Y Media. Abhijit?
Yeah.
There you
thank
go.
you.
Yep.
Thank you, Shannon, and thank you, Mr. Bethlenfalvy. First of all, I just, first of all, I want to thank that this budget has been very targeted on a lot of, segments and a lot of places. But I just want to know about the highways, that what specifically this budget is going to target, on highways.
Yeah, Abhijit, that's a really good question. And I don't know about you, but I've been in gridlock, and gridlock costs us about $56 billion a year. So it's a significant cost to our economy not to deal with gridlock. That's why we continue to invest record amounts in building not just subways, but light rapid transit, what they call LRT, extending the GO system, encouraging people to take public transit through the integrated one fare. So whether you're in Hamilton or Brampton or Mississauga or my region, Durham, or York, you pay one fare, which puts more money back in your pocket, takes you off the road. But those that can't use public transit, or it's not available, we need to build more highways. So specifically in this budget, we continue to advance funding and work for highways such as 413, which is going to be an important highway to relieve pressure on our 400 series, which are some of the most congested in North America. We continue to advance work on Bradford Bypass, which is up by the 404 and the 400, connecting them up further north of Highway 407. And we continue to widen roads, like in my riding, Highway 7. It's 2-lane to 4-lane, widening the Highway 401 in certain sections. And I could go on and on and on, that we continue to invest in highways, because it's not either or. As you know, it's you got to do some highways, you got to do some transit, you've got to keep building. You have bridges, you've got to get your infrastructure in shape, because with our population growth, gridlock's not going to get any easier. So we got to keep leaning very heavily into it.
Thank you so much, Minister.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Thomas with the National Ethnic Press and Media Council.
You mean myself?
Yes, did you have a question?
Yes. Minister, I was the other day with the group who was locked in for the budget. Of course, you didn't came up, and therefore my questions never answered. The problem is, in Ontario, there is a number of about 278, excuse me, please, outlets, media outlets, ethnic. Some of them already last year closed down because of the economic situation surrounding the industry. And we approached the federal government. The federal government supported us little or much. Anyhow, they gave something. They tried to support us. I asked the Premier time and again if it's possible to give us a support also. I mean, the outlets of Ontario to be supported also by the government of Ontario. I'm not asking you to go all over Canada, but for the province of Ontario, the sector is suffering financially. Daily, we are losing. We lost almost 4 or 5 printing shops. And every day someone is closing from the outlets. I will appreciate if you can do something to support this industry, I mean this sector. We are a multicultural society. We need those voices, and I'm quite sure that you can do that. We don't need much money. For example, if the government decides to reallocate $1 million a year, is going to be, I believe, is going to be of a help. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Thomas. And I do recall you asking that question last Thursday. I would say a couple things. First off, I think you've got general support from us with regard to the cultural media, not least of which is by having sessions like this in person and online, and we'll continue to support access for cultural media, ethnic media. I would say number two, you've got no better advocate, frankly, than Minister Graham McGregor, who's our minister, and I know he's listening very carefully. So that's something we're going to continue to look at. We hear you, and I have a lot of confidence in Minister McGregor.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, I'm going to go to Lincoln with Share News. Lincoln?
Yes, you heard me?
Yeah, if you'd like to ask your question.
Yes. We travel to the United States, very cumbersome, and a lot of people are avoiding travel at all costs. Is Ontario considering investing or doing anything to attract more tourists from around the world, including the Caribbean, where I'm from? Is any consideration being given to that? Any investment in the tourism sector in terms of attracting more people to spend time in Canada?
Yeah, no, Lincoln, that's a very good question. I know our Minister of Tourism, Stan Cho, is very seized with the exact question you're asking. He's talking to stakeholders right across Ontario to get, not just a read on what's happening now, but down the road for attracting more tourists to Ontario. He's made a number of announcements already, for example, on the Shaw Festival and the McMichael, which are iconic cultural attractions for tourists right here in Ontario. He continues to make investments and lean into other attractions. We'll have more announcements to make. One thing I can tell you is that and we do talk to the various industry groups. One thing we are hearing is that Ontarians are staying in Ontario more. So we're seeing, as you say, less Ontarians going to the US and they actually, when they don't go to the US, some of them are going to the Caribbean. So the Caribbean's doing pretty well. But then Europeans and others, we're getting evidence that they're coming to Canada. So we are getting evidence that bookings and bed and breakfasts and destination sites are up. But it's something that we're going to continue to watch very closely, given a lot of the uncertainty that you highlight is happening right now.
Okay, thank you. Next, I have a question from Jasleen at PTC Punjabi.
Hello, Minister. This is Jasleen from PTC Punjabi. Thank you so much for your time. My question is about homelessness. A report from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario found that more than 81,000 Ontarians experienced known homelessness last year, meaning they interacted with a government initiative or program that was able to count them. But yet, the budget offers no new investment to address the homelessness crisis.
Yeah, Jasleen, very good question. I would say the budget does continue to address the homelessness situation. You know, we have had, as I mentioned earlier, quite a population surge in Ontario, which put a lot of pressure on our housing and our infrastructure, population growth, which I welcome, but is managed by the federal government. I would say a couple of things. First off, we, in my budget last year, increased the homelessness prevention program by 40% in one shot, $200 million. So now that's $1 billion over 5 years. That has permanently gone into providing funding to service managers in municipalities to help them with a range of challenges, shelters, wraparound services, immediate services, and so forth. The second thing, and particularly in our budget, we talk about the investment that we're making in the homelessness and addiction recovery treatment centers, known as the Heart Hubs. I think we funded a number close to 20 that we've announced, and there's more coming, I think another 18. You know, this is to help people who want to get off their addictions or deal with their mental health challenges, so that we can provide a process, obviously a treatment capability, but also ultimately services, including shelter and post-treatment services. So this is something we're working on very closely with the municipalities. I come back to the federal government. The federal government is responsible for immigration and the population growth. We welcome that, but we need them to be a funding partner to provide even more services to support the provinces and the municipalities who are responsible for the management of the people that come to our community. So it's a partnership. We are doing things, and we're very focused, including in this budget.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next, I'm going to go to Shazia with EOWAS.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. First of all, I must congratulate your government. The new budget that you have introduced has actually eased maybe a bit the life of a common man. My second, in fact, the first question is, and then I will ask the follow-up. My first question is that you might have seen, Minister, that a lot of jobs are being lost. There are hardly any jobs in the market. Young children who even have studied over here in this market are finding it hard to find any good jobs at all. Earlier they used to get jobs even in Tim Hortons and, Pizza Hut and all those places. Now they are not even getting those jobs there. Also, in the province, we definitely need a university. So as you people are very big on infrastructure, are you thinking of setting up a university now? Because a lot of students, because of lack of some of the programs here in our universities, are leaving Ontario and Canada, and they go to England or to Caribbean or Australia. Even they have started going because they are now offering Canadian programs. So we are losing out on a lot of foreign exchange. So these are my two questions, if they are concerning the government.
Yeah, Shazia, thank you for those questions. They're very good. Youth unemployment is something that we look at very closely. I would highlight that since our government took office, some million jobs have been created. So we've created a lot of jobs as a government. Now, we don't do the hiring, we set the conditions for job growth, but this budget is very much focused on the economy so that there are good jobs. That's why, as I mentioned, the 30 billion in immediate reliefs, but also looking at the longer term economy and leaning into things like critical minerals, our energy sector, our advanced manufacturing, providing supports. I mentioned some of them earlier, like the manufacturing tax credit, and of course, infrastructure. And all these initiatives require a lot of workers, skilled workers, engineers, STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math students. And to that and on the education that you highlighted, we announced in the budget $750 million for our colleges and universities to increase the number of STEM, science, technology, engineering, math positions by 20,500 positions, new positions a year. So we are funding the colleges and universities. We are working with labor through the Skills Development Fund to retrain workers. We put in another $1 billion in this budget, and we are supporting, the effort to retain and motivate more workers to stay in Ontario. And of course, there's always more to do, but I think we've got a very good plan, and this budget, to your point, has been very well received in that regard. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this will be our last question. As the minister, we do need to finish up soon, but I will go to Rodrigo at El Centro newspaper. Go ahead, Rodrigo. Rodrigo, we can't hear you. Okay. I think you might have to send your question via email. So with that, I'll just let the minister finish with a few final words, and then we will finish for the day.
Okay, well, thank you, Shannon. I want to echo a comment early on that, Shannon, you've been doing this for quite some time. You do a fantastic job. Thank you for continuing to do this, so important for our ethnic media, our cultural outreach. So thank you to you. And of course, I would like to thank Minister McGregor again for being such a champion for the community and his role as minister. And finally, I'd just like to thank all of you for participating today. We're very proud of the budget under Premier Ford's leadership and the whole team of the Progressive Conservative Party. We just got elected on a mandate to deliver this budget, to deliver a boost to our economy, to our businesses and workers, and we're seeing it through. And we very much appreciate all the questions that you've given us today, and I look forward to doing it again soon. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.